Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Why. This week we're making our way through the book of Exodus. We have Parsha Teruma. Parsha Teruma, among other things, deals with the construction of the tabernacle. The tabernacle really was the Mishkan. It was really the traveling temple before there was a temple in Jerusalem. And so this is what the Jewish people had when traveling in the desert. And so there's really two key themes, or two key ideas I want to address tonight. And one of them is a very interesting idea, is that the tabernacle, at the core of this tabernacle, was something called the Holy of Holies. And in that Holy of Holies was basically a place where, so to speak, was the resting place of the Shekhinah, or the divine eminence, or really the holiest place focused into one location. And so there's there's a question, if one reflects on it for a moment: how is that the God who has no physical being, at least that's what we read only a couple weeks ago in the Ten Commandments, that we can't worship any image of God. Now all of a sudden we're being asked to construct a traveling tabernacle with a little space, the Holy of Holies, where allegedly the Spirit of God is supposed to rest. So it seems to go against what we're told a couple weeks ago about not having any image of God. And so I think one of the basic idea there is that God really communicates in the sense that, in what we can understand, in that the human understanding it can't transcend the unknowable. The only way the humanity, people can relate to God was really through this very physical way. In fact, back in Parsha Yitro a couple weeks ago, when you had the Ten Commandments and the revelation at Sinai, the Jewish people said, Moses, you go speak to God. We can't do lest we die. We can't hear the voice of God. In other words, it was just too much. So what happened was that this is really the way for the Jewish people to connect. They needed some idea, some place to focus it. Now, obviously, that can easily become idolatry in the sense that, well, I still believe in God, but I'm just going to focus on this statue. That's just going to where I focus my energy. So obviously it can become very quickly fall into that slippery slope of idolatry. But the whole idea of this was that there was no physical place in that. I mean, there was no statue, no physical being, no object in which the Jewish people could point their prayers towards. And so that's definitely the way it was avoided. But I think the idea there in the lesson is that God very much, when dealing with us, does not deal with us in a manner in which we do not understand. In fact, as the rabbis say, Torah lo b'shamayim hi, the Torah is not in heaven. That's the idea that observing the Torah and following the Torah and establishing a relationship with God is something that every man, woman, and child is well capable of doing, and it's not something that's out of our control. And that leads really into the second part of what I want to talk about today, and that's the menorah. In this parsha, God commands Moses to construct a menorah. Now it's very interesting what it says here. He says, "You shall make a menorah of pure gold, hammered out shall the menorah be made." And that's Exodus 25:31. Very straightforward. Now the Midrash, again we've talked about the Midrash, the Jewish homily, says that Moses had a lot of trouble making this. He said that the first time God described the construction of the menorah, and Moses couldn't do it. So then God shows Moses an image of the menorah in a fire, like in a vision, and he still couldn't do it. And then finally God, he basically tells Moses, throw the gold in the fire and it will come out a menorah. And so the question here is that, well, if God knew that Moses would have trouble doing this, why did he ask him to do it not once, not twice, but 3 times? And so one of the Jewish commentators who wrote the Sfas Emes, what he said that really is that God obviously very well knew that Moses would have trouble here, but that this is really indicative of the kind of challenges that God gives us every day. The kind of challenges God gives us every day can sometimes be outside of our capabilities. It can sometimes be outside of something that we are not able to do at that time. But the whole idea is that God very well can have it completed, the task, and God will have the task completed, and God will allow us to complete the task. But the whole idea here is that Moses didn't just throw up his arms and say, I can't do it. He attempted to do it, and he couldn't, and then God put in the little quote-unquote crutch for him. And so the whole lesson for us there is that if we can't do something, if we're faced with a challenge that we really think is insurmountable, and there's no way we can possibly overcome it, all we need to do is just keep plugging along, and God will invariably give us an alternative. And if we can't do that, then God will invariably give us another alternative again. And so the main lesson from this this little aspect, this little episode of the menorah, is that every little challenge that we have, even the ones that seem totally impossible, are ones that definitely we would not have been given unless we could handle them. That doesn't mean that we're quote unquote going to succeed in them, in the sense that we're going to have an end result which is pleasing to us and which we really think is successful. But we are definitely going to be able to succeed in that, in the sense that we're going to achieve what we need to achieve. Unfortunately, that's not something that we always know. But the whole idea here is that when we're faced with a challenge, it's very easy and tempting to just throw up our hands and say, you can't do it. But if we know that God knows what our capabilities are, and that He's given us these challenges, presumably knowing more than we do about this opportunity and this challenge, then all we need to do is really put our nose to the grindstone, do everything we can, and ultimately then we can answer for our efforts in that way. So once again, the two key aspects, the two key lessons from today are: one, the traveling tabernacle. Why is it that right after being told that God has no image and no presence and no physical form, now we're being asked to have a Holy of Holies in the temple? Once again, that God relates to us in the language of man. Torah lo b'shamayim He, Torah is not in the heavens. So even though in this physical tabernacle in the Holy of Holies there was no physical being or statue or anything in which to focus our attention and our prayers, God does understand that we cannot wrap our heads around the unknowable, and so we need to have in some way something to focus our minds on. But that cannot be a slippery slope to idolatry. And then that, of course, leads into how God communicates with us on our level, talking about the menorah, is that every challenge God gives us not only is for our own good, but obviously God knows very well what our capabilities are, and that is very easy for us to say we can't do it. And the only thing we can do is just put our nose to the grindstone and work as hard as we can. So that's it for Parshat Teruma. Best wishes, Shabbat Shalom, God bless.